Hey guys, it's me, FaZe, back with my part 2 of the Whispers of the Old Gods review series. Now, before we go into it, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I apologize for falling behind on the cards. Just a lot of real life stuff has been happening, so I haven't been able to keep up that much. But I will make a review. I'll try to make a review daily of like 10 or so-ish cards until we catch up. So, the second thing is the last review was kind of impromptu and kind of all over the place. So this time, we'll have like a review format, if you will, where we take a look at a card, make some notable observations about it, and then try to judge if the card is going to be good in Wild, because I still think Wild is going to be at least a little bit popular. It's not going to be like a deserted play mode, at least in my opinion. Then we'll try to assess if the card is viable in Standard, and then in the Arena. So, with that being said, let's get right into the cards. Card number 1 we have is Eater of Secrets. 4 mana for a 2/4. Battlecry, destroy all enemy secrets, gain +1/+1 for each. Okay, so this is obviously geared to deal with the mysterious challenger turn. Because on any other secret, it's just a 4 mana 3/5 that destroys a secret. Sure, it destroys a secret, but it's just a 4 mana 3/5, and it's a conditional one at that. So, yeah, let's look at the best case scenario, right? You destroy the whole Christmas tree of secrets, and this becomes a 7/9. You know, that's really good and all that you played a 4 mana 7/9, but the issue with that is the way Hearthstone works is that you kind of want to allocate some of your mana for the turn that you efficiently deal with the opponent's board, and the rest of your mana towards developing your own. And if they play Challenger on 6, on 7, you play this, and then you only have 3 mana to deal with their 6/6 that they just played. So it kind of doesn't really stop the Challenger on like the body of the Challenger, basically. So that's why I think it's not that great, because that is like the insane best case scenario. Because still, there's more efficient ways to deal with Challenger. Like, the more efficient way would be to like attack with something, kill the get down, proc the avenge, have that whole sequence of secrets trigger, and then use a BGH. And maybe let the spirit trigger, like the competitive spirit trigger on a 1/1. That is still going to be more efficient than Eater of Secrets. And because of that, I don't think it's going to be that viable. We still need it as kind of a secret tech because Kazan is rotating out, and we kind of need something like a hate card towards secrets, I guess. With that all being said, let's look at the Standard in Wild and Arena. So in Wild, let's start with Wild. In Wild, this card, it's kind of like a tech against Secret Paladin if it gets way too rampant. But I still think BGH is it's like a better replacement to deal with the Challenger turn. In Standard, there's really not that much need for it because Scientist is rotating out, and with Scientist rotating out, that's going to decrease a lot of the playability of secrets. And so basically you would have to play secrets from your hand, and not really a lot of secrets are worth doing that. So in Standard, it's probably never going to see play. Also, in Standard, Secret Paladin is getting a big nerf because they're losing Minibot and Muster. And that's kind of a big deal. So I think that Secret Paladin won't be that dominant in the new Standard meta. And that's the main reason that this card won't see play, along with the Mad Scientist reason. In Arena, this card is really, really bad because it's a 4 mana 2/4. It doesn't do anything most of the time. You don't really want to pick secrets in Arena most of the time. So, yeah, don't pick this card in Arena, guys. It's pretty bad. Moving on to card number 2, we have Cthulhu's Chosen. That's a very interesting card. It may be one of the most powerful cards in the set, as like a standalone. It's a 4-mana 4/2 Divine Shield. Battle Cry, give your Cthulhu +2/+2 wherever it is. Okay, so let's look at this card in Wild. In Wild, this is probably not going to see play because there's all those Haunted Creepers and Implosions still running around. There's a lot of Death Rattles. There's Muster is still there. So there's like a lot of efficient ways to deal with the Divine Shield. And I feel like Wild is so refined that Cthulhu decks are not going to be able to survive in Wild. In Standard, though, like you remove all the Death Rattles and all the tokens and whatnot, and this is suddenly playable, like on its own. So that's even ignoring the Battle Cry. If it was just a 4-mana 4/2 Divine Shield, it would be playable. And on top of that, it buffs your Cthulhu. So in Standard, this is going to be pretty good. In Arena, this card will not see play simply because Cthulhu cards have been announced that they won't be available in the Arena. Well, yeah. Those are my thoughts on Cthulhu's Chosen. Pretty good card in Standard. In Wild, though, you may want to steer clear from the Cthulhu deck, I think. The next card, another Cthulhu synergistic card. Battle Cry, if your Cthulhu has at least 10 attack, gain 10 armor. Now, again, I think in Wild, Cthulhu decks are not going to be able to survive. So you probably don't want to play this in Wild because Cthulhu decks are not going to be that good. I could be wrong though because 10 armor is a lot, and in Cthulhu decks, like most of them are Battle Cry centric, so Bran Bronzebeard is going to see a lot of play in those. And if you play Bran with this, it's pretty busted. So just the sheer amount of life gain, the potential life gain of this card may make Cthulhu Warrior viable in Wild. I'm still not convinced though, because the issue with this card is that how often are you going to be able to play it on curve with the Battle Cry? Because let's be honest, the 7-mana 6/6 on turn 7, it's like, it's not good. Like, you play this card for the Battle Cry. And so the question really becomes, are you going to be able to proc it on curve? And I think you might be. If you are, this is worth playing. If you aren't, it's probably only worth playing in Standard, or at least trying it out in like a Cthulhu Warrior, because Warrior has a lot of natural tools to prolong the game. And when you're playing a Cthulhu deck, you just want to prolong the game. You want to get to the 8th game. You have a Cthulhu in your deck that is going to basically win you the game. More often than not when you play him. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on this card. Again, it's a Cthulhu card. It will not be seen in the Arena. The next one, we have a Druid card. 4 mana for a 4/5, Klaxxi Amber-Weaver. Battle Cry, if your Cthulhu has at least 10 attack, gain +5 health. Now, okay, let's make some observations about this card first. First of all, on turn 4, it's unlikely that you're going to have a 10 attack Cthulhu. Because for the most, what we've seen is there's only 2 minions prior to this. The Beckoner of Evil, the 2 mana 2/3 that buffs Cthulhu +2/+2, and Twilight Elder. And those on alone, if you play like them, if you like play them on curve, like 2, 3, and 4, this is not gonna proc. But even if it doesn't proc, it's a Chillwind Yeti. It's Chillwind Yeti on 5. That's perfectly fine. It's a Chillwind Yeti that scales amazingly in the late game. And even if it gets silenced, like, you avoided a silence on your Cthulhu. You avoided a silence on, like, it's basically not the end of the world if it gets silenced, because it's still a 4 mana 4/5. It's perfectly fine. So this, I think this is a really strong card. I don't know if it'll see play in Wild. Druid is kind of in a weird spot right now because we don't know how the nerfs are gonna happen with it, but I think there's big potential for like a tempo-oriented Cthulhu Druid with this in it as like a late game buffer, right? In standard, it's definitely playable because, well, it's standard. The power level of everything is going to lower a little bit. So in standard, it's definitely playable. In wild, we'll have to see what happens with Druid before we make any big assumptions. And in arena, again, Cthulhu card, not really going to be in arena. Okay, so on to the more, like, one of the most interesting cards. Blizzard have announced that there will be no new mechanic, but in this expansion, but there's plenty of new things that can kind of be considered new mechanics. For example, the Forbidden Flame, 0 mana, spend all your mana, deal that much damage to a minion. It's kind of a new mechanic. We've never actually had this in Hearthstone before, something that scales with your mana. Obviously, with that scale, you have to sacrifice something because the card is really flexible, and what you sacrifice is power. You sacrifice power for flexibility. That's basically what this card is. So it's pretty bad because if you look at some damage spells like Frostbolt for Mage, it's a 2 mana, deal 3. And this is even a mage card. So it's a 2 mana, deal 3, and freeze something. Okay, look at Fireball. Look at something like Fireball. It's a 4 mana, deal 6. So the power level of this card is really, really scaled down a lot. And the problem with this is that it doesn't actually, most of the time, it doesn't kill minions on curve. Because if you play it like on a 4-drop, 4-drops are generally not going to be killable by this. 3-drops, again, if you play it on 3 mana, generally not going to be killable by this. So, all in all, I don't think this card is very good. Maybe it'll be okay in Tempo Mage. But Tempo Mage has a lot of tools already, and there's a lot of spells, so if it might get to the point where if you put this in Tempo Mage with like the Flame Wakers and stuff, like the deck becomes just too inconsistent because you're almost entirely running spells and almost no minions with the exclusion of Mad Scientist, for example. So I don't think Forbidden Flame is going to see that much play, to be honest. In Wild, there's no way you're seeing this in Wild. There's way too many busted things to be doing in Wild to be playing Forbidden Flame, I think. In Standard, it's still a bit weak, I think. The card is just a bit too weak, in my opinion. I could be wrong, and maybe the flexibility outweighs the loss of power, but we'll have to see. Not really hopeful, though. And in Arena, it's a good card. It's a good card because it's flexible. In Arena, you can afford the power drop because the whole power level of Arena is substantially lower. Also, in Arena, removal is really valuable just because it's not that common. It allows you to flip the board. So in Arena, it's going to be a good card. Okay, moving on to the next card, Forbidden Shaping. It's the same theme, kind of. Use all your mana, summon a random minion that costs that much. So it's a priest card. And priests have really issues with summoning minions. And this has been, I believe, intentional on Blizzard's part, because to like not give priest any good minions, because priest hero power is so strong that if you give them good early game minions that they can just start healing up, you will never win the game versus priest. So this is kind of a curve fixer for priest, but if we look at it in a different way, the closest card I can compare this to is Unstable Portal, because you don't know what you're getting. But Unstable Portal is not actually a good card. It's a good card in Tempo Mage because it has 3 synergies. It synergizes with Mana Warp, it synergizes with Flamewaker, and with Sorcerer's Apprentice, which are all around that Unstable Portal. mana cost, right? All of them are around that mana cost. And also, you get a discount on the minion. And you don't miss the battle cry on a minion, which is kind of really important because Forbidden Shaping ignores battle cries. You don't get the battle cry trigger. And that's kind of a deal breaker. So if you combine all of those things, it kind of pales in comparison. Now, what you gain with Forbidden Shaping is that you kind of get to control at which point you play it. So the randomness is somewhat mitigated because Unstable Portal is completely random. Whereas Forbidden Shaping is random, but it's constrained to that mana cost at which you play it. It's going to be a very skill-based card to play, for sure, because you're going to have to know the percentages of what minions at what mana cost have, for example, Taunt, or like some unusual ability that's going to be useful to you. And I think that's really good. It's a very well-designed card. All of the Forbidden cards are really nicely designed, but I still think this is too weak. If you play this in Wild, you will get absolutely destroyed, I think, simply because the power level over there is too high. If you play it in Standard, maybe you make something work. Maybe, because, again, power level in Standard is a bit lower. But like taking into account everything that I've said, like that you don't get a discount on the minion, that you don't get the battle cry, that you don't that is completely random. It's still it feels just too weak. If it were to summon like a minion for 1 more mana, that would be nice and all, but then we would have the issue of what would happen when you play it on 10 mana, right? Because there's no 11 mana minions, there's no 11 mana minions. So, yeah, all in all, this card is not that great. In Arena, it's completely fine. In Arena, it's fine because often in Arena as Priest, you just need to get the board. You just need to get the board because as soon as you get the board, your hero power will carry you to victory. And this kind of helps you curve out, like whenever you don't have a minion to play, you just play this, right? It kind of like fills that slot because Arena is a much more minion heavy game, and you'll see this picked in Arena. And you should pick it, honestly. There's some pretty bad epics in Arena. Okay, so moving on. Forbidden Healing. Last of the forbidden cards that we know of. 0 mana Paladin card. Spend all your mana, heal for double the mana you spent. Now, this is a very interesting card. Again, it's overcosted because if you look at some healing spells like Healing Touch, for example, Healing Touch is 3 mana, restore 8. This on 3 mana, restore 6, so you're kind of losing a bit. Paladin, Holy Light, 2 mana, restore 6. Again, losing a bit. If you play this on 2 mana, you restore 4. Priest is probably has the most overpowered heal. In Flash Heal, 1 mana, restore 5. But you guys get the point. It's a bit overcosted, pardon me. So, again, what you get is flexibility. Now, I think this is actually probably the most playable card. Healing spells in general don't have that. They're not that appealing because they don't do anything in the matchups that you don't need healing. But Forbidden Healing is okay. Like, you can just run one of these in your deck. I think 2 would be overkill, but you can run one of these in your deck and heal for like 20 in a clutch situation. So sacrificing just the 1 card slot for healing is honestly not that bad. This could see some play in like Murloc Paladin, because Murloc Paladin, we know that the Old Murkai is not going to be in the standard format, but Murloc Paladin is really strong. So standard is going to have the power level lowered a little bit. And then Murloc Paladin, again, it's going to have his power level lowered a little bit because of the exclusion of Old Murkai. So for all of those reasons, I think that Murloc Paladin is still going to be viable in the new standard format. And this could be a card that you put in your deck just to feel a little bit more. Just to like make that aggro matchup just all the more favorable. In Wild, aside from like, in Wild it's the same thing, honestly. In Wild it's the same thing in my opinion. Like, the flexibility of the healing on this, and you can even heal a minion, so it's not like that terrible. So it could, like, this is probably the card that is most likely to see play, I believe, out of all the forbidden cards. The others are just too low impact, because healing is very valuable, and we're losing a lot of healing tools. Like, we're losing Healbot. The only thing we still have is the Refreshment Vendor, right? That's going to stick around with TGT. So, since we're losing a lot of healing, maybe this is a bit more powerful than it seems. But yeah, we'll have to see. And in Arena, this is really bad in Arena. It's a healing card. You don't want to pick a healing card in Arena almost ever. Okay, moving on to the next card. Infested Tauren. Now, the obvious comparison to this is Sludge Belcher Mini, right? But the problem is that Slime doesn't have Taunt. It's been confirmed by Blizzard devs that Slime does not have Taunt. And the big reason that you play Sludge Belcher is that both of the things have Taunt. So it's kind of really annoying to get through. This is not annoying to get through at all. Also, the upfront body is much weaker. If this was a 3/4, it would probably see play. But like, if you add up the stats, it's a 4 mana 4/5 taunt, which is okay. Don't get me wrong, but it's not really a 4 mana 4/5 taunt, because your opponent can trade in such a way as to mitigate it. Also, it only a 3 health of it has taunt. It's just a bit too low impact to see play anywhere. If you play this in Constructed, you're going to lose the game more often than not. Because, again, Constructed is just so busted. There's so many efficient ways to deal with this. And if you play this in Wild, again, it's just slightly too low impact. It's just a low impact card. That's what it is. In Arena, sometimes you're going to see this. I would not advise picking it. But sometimes the choices are just horrendous in Arena. But yeah, overall, just a vanilla, slightly underwhelming card. Nothing really too special about it. Nothing really too exciting about it. All in all, it's an okay card. I think it's just a little bit too low power to see play anywhere. Okay, so next card, we have Priest Legendary. Oh dear. So exciting. 6 mana 5/5. Battlecry, summon a 1/1 copy of each of your other minions. Okay, let's start right off the bat and say this card is terrible. Okay, it's really bad. First of all, it's a 6 mana 5/5, which is sometimes playable. See Sylvanas. See Emperor. But both of those cards have insane effects. And that's why they're playable. This does not have an insane effect. It's just too conditional. First of all, you have to have a minion that you want to copy with it. And you have to have to play that minion, have it stick on the board for a turn. For example, a Sylvanas, right? You have to, first of all, whenever you play Sylvanas, you kind of hope it dies, right? You don't hope it lives, for the most part. But I digress. Anyway, you have to play a minion, you have to have it live, and then you have to play Herald Volazj. And on top of that, the minions that you usually want to play to copy with Herald Volazj are more than 4 mana, which means you can't copy it on turn 10 even. Like, you can't play both cards on turn 10, and that's somewhat of a big deal. So you basically have to play a big minion, have it survive, like Sylvanas, or even our good old pal, Ragnaros. Ragnaros. Apologies. And then you copy it for like the insane effect. But assume that happens, right? Assume you play Ragnaros. It sticks on the board. It kills something. You copy it. Like, you already have a rag on the board. You're in a really good spot, presumably, if you played a rag and it did not get removed instantly. So why do you need a 1/1 copy of a Ragnaros that is like likely to get pinged off? It's just too circumstantial. Also, on top of that, you have to play Herald Volazj. Like, you have to have drawn it. So it's just too circumstantial. The card is not good on its own. And whenever you play it, you have to already be ahead on the board. And even when you do, it's not that good. So, yeah, pretty bad card. Do not pick this in Arena. Do not play this in Wild. You will strictly lower your win rate if you put this card in your deck. Do not play this in Standard. Just do not play this card. Okay, next card we have Doom! Exclamation point. What is Doom? 10 mana Warlock spell. Destroy all minions. Draw a card for each. Again, right off the bat, let's get this out of the way. The card is horrendous. The card is really bad. The reason it's really bad is that it's basically very close to something like Twisting Nether. Right? This is the closest comparison. So you pay 2 more mana for the potential to draw a few cards. So let's go over the problems with this card. First of all, it's a card that draws you cards in a class that is already the best class at drawing cards, because you have life tap. So already that's a pretty bad start, because you can always Twisting Nether and tap and still gain 1 card, which is not that bad. And also you can play Twisting Nether on 8 without tapping. You cannot play Doom on 8 mana. Next thing we have is, like, let's say you play Twisting Nether. What kind of a deck do you put this card in? Like, if you put it in an aggro deck, why are you putting this in your aggro deck? It's just doesn't make sense. So, okay, let's say you're playing a control deck. If you're playing a control deck, you're more likely to have, like, let's say 8 cards in your hand, and your opponent have 4 minions. So you play you play Doom, and then you draw 4 cards and mill 3 of them. That doesn't sound like a thing that you want to do. So that's another problem with the card. So, like, the only place where you would play this is in a low-cost Reno Warlock, like a low-curved Reno Warlock, with some kind of combo potential, like Arcane Golem, Faceless. That's the only place you would play this. And that is so specific, and I'm not even sure it's going to be good in there. People are going to try it. I'm really excited about the animation of this card. Hopefully it's not just a clone of Twisting Nether's animation. But otherwise, the card is pretty bad. Pretty bad. Also, another problem with this is that it's 10 mana. You cannot do anything else. So your opponent gets to reset up the board before you get to do anything else. So that's already, that's like another minus on the list. So all in all, pretty bad card. Pretty bad card. In Wild, way too slow. No way you play this in Wild. In Standard, like I said, maybe in some kind of low curve Reno Warlock. But even that is like a big stretch. And in Arena, I mean, it's Arena. Sometimes you can afford to pick this and just let your opponent overextend, and you play this and draw a lot of cards. And in Arena, you can sometimes waste your turn clearing your opponent's board and still stay alive, because they even if after they set up, just because Arena is a lot slower. So Arena would probably be the only place you would see Doom, sadly, when the metagame settles. Alright then, moving on. We have Hallazeal the Ascended. It's a Shaman card. Now, first of all, this card is really good. It's surprisingly good, actually. It's very good. The reason it's good is it's a 5-mana 4/6. That's a reasonable stat line. We have something like Druid of the Claw on on 5 mana. Now, of course, the claw is flexible, it has taunt, yada yada yada. Still, 5 mana 4/6, pretty solid. Also, Spectral Knight actually saw a lot of play. Well, not a lot, some play. When spell classes were dominant, like Rogue. So it's not unusual to see a 5 mana 4/6 played. So building from there, this is the single card that is going to enable some sort of mid-range / control shaman to because to basically stay in the game versus aggro decks. Because right now you need to play Healing Wave to win versus aggro decks, and Healing Wave is a bad card because shaman cannot draw cards very efficiently. Because if it could, it's just gonna be broken. So all of your cards are already very limited, and you can't afford to waste a slot basically on Healing Wave. So for that reason, this card is generally pretty bad. Also, if you lose the Joust, it's kind of an underwhelming healing touch. So that's why you don't play Healing Wave. This is attached to a minion and a good statted minion as well. So that's the reason this. I assume this will see play. This, if mid-range / control shaman comes back, it's gonna be because of this card. Also, the rule of thumb is gonna be, if you have Lightning Storm in your shaman deck, you put this in. If you don't have Lightning Storm in your shaman deck, like aggro shaman, you don't put it in. That's basically what it's going to be. So all in all, very good card. In standard, in wild, it could see play in both places, just because a token shaman is easier to build in wild. It's not that bad. And you now have the tools with this, one more tool to make it reliably into the late game, where you can get value out of your fire elementals and things like that, and your totems as well. So all in all, pretty good card. In standard, I expect to see this again just because it's a reasonable card. And in arena, it's pretty good. It's not the best because it's a 5 mana 4/6, and you're generally not going to get that many spells in arena. But 5 mana 4/6 is like a Spiteful Smith. What? Oh, there you go. It's like a Spiteful Smith. You sometimes pick this in classes that don't even have weapons. So it's a reasonable stat line with some upside. And sometimes you're going to have to pick between Millhouse Manastorm, Laura Walker Cho, or this. And you're going to pick this. So that's about it for the Shaman Legendary. All in all, very good card. Excited to see this. It's a well-balanced card, well-designed card. Hopefully this pulls Shaman out of the dumpster, or at least non-aggro Shamans out of the dumpster. Next card we have Undercity Huckster. This is a very interesting card. The closest comparison you can make is to a Loot Hoarder. So it's a 2 mana. It's a 2 mana card that when it dies, it draws you a card. Okay, so the big difference between Undercity Huckster and Loot Hoarder is the 1 and 2 health. 2 health actually means that this is actually a card. It is not something that is just going to cycle. 2 mana means it's actually a card. The trade-off is that you don't get a card that you specifically put in your deck to draw, to be part of your game plan and lead you towards your win condition. You're gonna get a random class card, and random class cards are all over the place. You could get something terrible, like Corruption, for example, or Sacrificial Pact, or something. Sacrificial Pact is probably a bad example because if you're playing against Warlock, chances are you're seeing some demons, so it's not that bad, but basically the randomness is what makes this card pretty bad. It's an interesting and well-designed card, though. Blizzard does seem to push the rogue in this card draw steal from your opponent's class kind of thing. death rattle kind of thing. And it's noteworthy that you Undercity Huckster curves well into Unearthed Raptor. Alright. So you play Undercity Huckster, you curve into Unearthed Raptor, you get 2 card draw at the end of the whole exchange, I guess. But still, it's like 2 random cards for your opponent's class so it kind of depends on what you're versing. So it kind of boils down to, are class cards good against the same class? And if they are, well, good. This is going to be pretty good. If they're not, then probably won't see that much play. I assume this will be experimented in standard, at least a little bit with the Raptor, but in wild, there's just way too many busted things for you to play such a slow game, I believe. Because this is a card draw game that you're playing with this card. So you're essentially going for the value game. And yes, Rogue can very efficiently trade value into tempo, because they have backstabs and preparations and eviscerates and combo cards and stuff like that. So it might actually be reasonable, but not in wild. Wild is going to be this absolute powerhouse that you have to have a tier 0 deck to compete in, basically. In standard, I expect to see this some form of experimentation. As to whether or not it will be viable, I cannot really say as of now, because it's a hard card to evaluate. Yeah, that's about it. And in Arena, it's a very good card. It's a good trade-off with the Loot Hoarder in Arena, I think, like the randomness. Because Arena is, again, slightly low power level, so the randomness is also going to make this card a little bit worse, like the card on average that you're going to get. But in Arena, it's kind of okay. You can almost make any card work in Arena in certain situations. So in Arena, it's going to be okay. In Arena, it's going to be okay. The problem with Rogue is that, like, it's kind of the Druid problem, right? If you look at Druid, everything they've got that has come since the Classic set has been pretty bad. That's because their Classic cards are really good. Their Classic and their Basic cards. The only good thing that we got is, like, that's really, really good is probably something like Mounted Raptor. Everything else is just kind of well balanced, because you have, like, your busted things like Keeper of the Grove, you have things like Swipe, you have Druid of the Claws, you have the Force of Nature Savage Roar combo. So everything after standard, everything after basic and classic cards has been kind of and Rogue is kind of in the same spot. If you look at Rogue, like, most of their overpowered cards are cards that were in the original set. You have your backstabs, you have your shadow steps, if you will. You have your deadly poisons, which is a very good weapon buff card. You have your blade flurries as your AoE, which synergizes as well with your deadly poisons. You have your even Defiance Ringleader is not that bad, to be honest. You have your eviscerates, you have your SI7 agents, you have your Van Cleef, right? So you have your prep, you have your sprint. Like, all of these are so good that you can't really print more tempo cards for Rogue without breaking the class. So that's why we're seeing all of this card draw happening to, like, enable some kind of control Rogue. And we also saw this in Druid, where they tried to push it into, like, a beast direction, but I'm getting onto a rant about now. Going back to Undercity Huckster, that's the reason I think the card is what it is. They're kind of like pushing the Death Rattle Rogue, and it's completely fine. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. The card is going to see some play in standard, not that much in constructed. I mean, in wild, I don't think. And in arena, it's a very good card. You see this, you almost always pick it. And last card that we have is Faceless Shambler. Now, the closest thing to this is obviously Faceless Manipulator, right? So, first of all, they both copy something. Faceless Shambler is a 4-mana 1/1 taunt, and the taunt part is really important. Battlecry copy of friendly minions' attack and health. So, the synergies with this card are basically overstated minions for their mana cost. So, things like giants fit well into that category. Mountain Giants, Molten Giants, all of those. Things like Watcher is also overstated. Things like Eerie Statue is also overstated. Maybe, and you can go on to stuff like Anima Golem, right? That is overstated. You can go into like Bell Reaver. You can even do stuff with like Power Overwhelming for Warlock. So there's like stuff to do with this card. The problem with this is that it again, it's like the Herald Volazj problem, is what I would say. It's that it's way too situational. It's way too situational to play it. It's way more situational than Faceless Manipulator. First of all, you cannot target enemy minions with this, as it says friendly attack or health and health. So you have to have a friendly minion. You have to have a minion on the board. So that already makes it a bit bad. Although I suspect if you could copy like an enemy minion's attack and health, that would be a bit too busted at 4 mana. So that's why it's got that restriction, I assume. The problem with this, another problem with this, is that this gets silenced, you baby rage, and you swift rage, and you rage, and you throw your PC out the fucking window because it is so bad when it gets silenced. It is possibly the contender, like the best contender for worst card to get silenced of all time. So, silence is a big deal with this. Blizzard have been like toying around with nerfing silence, I guess. And I think they should, for the most part. But even if silence is nerfed or changed in some way, for example, you buff all Siren Scar, like the cost of silence cards by 1 mana. Even then, like, you might sometimes need to run Ironbeak Howl, and this will just die. So, way too conditional of a card. You have to draw the card. You have to play an overstated minion. That minion has to stick on the board, and then you have to faceless it. It's way too situational, in my opinion. I don't think it will see any amount of play in any format. Like, people are going to experiment as they always do, as we always do, all of us, in the start of the new expansion and new format. But when things settle down, I don't expect to see any Faceless Shamblers basically anywhere. In Arena, there are worse epics than this, so maybe some potential there, but it's kind of like a mid-game minion, even then, so you don't... It's a circumstantially okay card in Arena, which makes it, again, pretty bad. But again, epics in Arena are somewhat horrendous sometimes, so maybe you'll pick this sometimes. Anyway, that's it for the review, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Did I nail all the cards? Did I bomb every single card? Let me know what you guys think about the cards and the expansion as a whole. Just post a comment. I will read all of them as always. And hey, maybe the old God's whispers tempt you to hit that subscribe button. All right. Have a great day, guys, and I will catch you in the next video.